Vera Cousins had been the stenographer in courtroom 6 for 19 years. She had keyed the words of grieving families, crooked contractors, and 2 sitting officials who had cried on the stand. She believed by the afternoon in question that there was nothing left in a courtroom that could surprise her. She was wrong about that. The afternoon session of the Delwood County Civil Docket was already underway when the double doors at the back opened, and a young woman stepped. Inside, she was slight, early 20s if that, in a gray cardigan and dark slacks, a manila folder held flat against her side. She moved quietly, the way people do when they have been raised not to make a fuss, and she scanned the room once for the clerk's table. That was when Deputy Bailiff Cleon Hatter spoke. He was stationed near the side wall, thick-armed and unhurried, a man who had worked courtroom 6 for 11 years and had somewhere along the way confused tenure with rank. He did not shout. He did not need to. The acoustics of courtroom 6 were excellent, and his voice carried to every bench in the gallery when he said, loud enough for the row of waiting attorneys to hear, "Help you find somewhere else to be, Hon." He said it with a smile. That was the part Vera would not forget. Not a cruel smile, exactly. Something worse, a bored one. As though the young woman in the gray cardigan were a minor inconvenience in an otherwise routine afternoon, a face that had wandered in from the wrong floor. The young woman stopped walking. She turned toward him. She did not flush, did not bristle, did not look to anyone in the gallery for support. She simply looked at him, level, unhurried, and said, "I'm the witness on the Calloway matter. I was told 2 o'clock. Hatter's smile did not fully leave. He glanced at the clerk with the small private look of a man sharing a joke and said, "Witness stands up front. You'll want to look like you belong before you get there." Vera's finger stopped above her keys for exactly 1 second. Then she kept typing, because that was her job, and because she had no authority over what happened next. She felt the gallery shift. The particular stillness of a room that has heard something it does not know what to do with. 2 of the waiting attorneys looked at the floor. The young woman said nothing further to Hatter. She walked to the clerk, confirmed her name, Marin Alcott, and took her seat in the gallery to wait. She placed the manila folder on her knees and folded her hands on top of it. She did not look in Hatter's direction again. Judge Elena Navarro had been on the bench since the morning's session and was known in Delwood County for 2 things: meticulous procedure and an absolute intolerance for wasted time. She entered from the side door at 2 minutes past 2, took her seat, and scanned the room once in the efficient way she always did, taking in the attorneys, the gallery, the position of her clerk, the stenographer at her machine. Vera had been watching the judge long enough to know that scan was not decorative. The Calloway matter was a contract dispute. A property management company accused of falsifying maintenance records and billing a building's tenants, pairs that were never made. It had gone on for 3 days. The defense had been confident through most of it, and their confidence had not yet fully cracked. But the plaintiff's attorney, a careful woman named Sloan, had built her case in layers, and Marin Alcott was the last one. When Marin was called, she walked to the stand the same way she had walked through the door. Quietly, without performance. She was sworn in. She set her folder on the rail. Vera noticed that the defense attorney, who had been leaning back in his chair for most of the afternoon, sat forward. Sloane's questions were precise. "What did you observe and when? What is this document? Can you describe how you obtained it?" Marin answered each one in the same register. Clear, unhurried, certain. She had been a building supervisor for 2 years before the management company terminated her contract without cause, and in those 2 years she had kept records. Not out of suspicion, she explained, but because she had been trained that way. Every maintenance request logged with a date and a photo. Every contractor sign-in recorded. Every billing cycle filed. She opened the folder. The documents were organized with the kind of care that does not happen quickly. The kind that happens over many months. Someone who already knows the truth and is only waiting for the right room to say it in. The defense attorney objected twice. Both times, Judge Navarro overruled without ceremony. The exhibits were entered. The timestamps matched. Contractors whose names appeared on the billing records, Marin explained, had not set foot in the building on the dates in question. She had the sign-in logs to prove it. cross-referenced with the dates the management company had billed. Her termination, she noted, had come 4 days after she submitted a written question to the property manager about the discrepancy. Defense had no effective cross-examination. They asked about her credentials, her relationship to the tenants, whether she had any personal grievance. Marin answered each question the way she had answered all the others. Factually, without heat, particular steadiness of a person who does not need to perform certainty because they actually have it. When she stepped down, Vera heard one of the attorneys behind her exhale. It was in the pause after Marin returned to the gallery. The brief, procedural quiet, while Sloane conferred with her co-counsel and the judge made a notation that Deputy Hatter made his second mistake. It was small, and he likely thought it invisible. A short sound, somewhere between a laugh and a breath, accompanied by a glance toward the door, as though the weight of the afternoon's testimony had simply confirmed something he had already decided about the young woman in the gray cardigan. Vera did not imagine it. She saw the clerk's head turn. She saw one of the waiting attorneys look away from Hatter, with the specific discomfort of someone who wants no part of what is coming. Judge Navarro looked up from her notes. The room, which had been gathering itself for the next procedural step, went very still. Deputy Hatter. The judge's voice was not raised. It did not need to be. Step forward, please. He did not with alarm, not yet, because he was a man who had stood in this room for 11 years and believed that standing there long enough constituted a kind of protection. This court has a record, Judge Navarro said. Everything that occurs within these walls is part of that record. That includes the remark you directed at this witness when she entered, and the conduct you have just demonstrated from your post. She paused. Want to be precise about what I observed so that the record is exact. When Ms. Alcott entered this courtroom at the appointed time, you addressed her in a manner that was dismissive, condescending, and unworthy of this proceeding. You questioned, by implication, she belonged here. You did so in front of counsel, gallery, and court staff. Hatter's face had gone careful. You will stand here, the judge said, and you will address Ms. Alcott directly in this room, and you will apologize. Not to me, to her. There was a second, just one, where Vera thought Hatter might say something. He was a man who had spent 11 years in this room, and had perhaps never been asked to account for it. Judge Navarro's expression held the particular quality of a door that has been shut and will not open again, and Hatter turned toward the gallery. Mrs. Alcott, he said, I apologize for how I spoke to you. Marin Alcott looked at him. Thank you, she said. Just that. For the Judge Navarro continued. I am directing that a written reprimand be entered into Deputy Hatter's personnel file, and that court administration receive a copy of today's transcript. The conduct will be reviewed through the appropriate channels. She looked once more at Hatter. You may return to your post. He did. Vera's fingers were already moving. She keyed the last of the judge's words. And then, in the silence before the next matter was called, she looked across the room at Marin Alcott, who was gathering her folder and her cardigan and preparing to leave the same way she had arrived, without performance, without gloating, without any of the things a lesser dignity might have reached for. Vera had been in courtroom 6 for 19 years. She had seen people brought low by their own arrogance, and she had seen the law do its patient, impersonal work. She did not think she had ever seen both happen so cleanly, or witnessed a person carry themselves through it, with so little need for the rooms. Applause. She keyed the timestamp 2:47 p.m. The record was complete.